Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Velero community meeting / open discussion. Today, we got a bunch of things that we want to handle per usual. And I'm going to start with sharing my screen so you all can see the agenda here. And then we have Ashish first, and he's not on yet. So we'll wait for him to give his update. So we'll move over to brito-rafa.
Right. Hello, everyone. My name is Rafael Brito. I go by brito-rafa GitHub. Actually, nobody calls me like this, but one day I created that account and just, anyways. I am from VMware, working for Office of CTO, and I've been involved in a bunch of projects, and now I got in top of my list a project to help the community to do easier migrations, okay, among Kubernetes and so on. And I've been working closely with the Velero team, and recently put a PR, a very simple one, just to have labels about Kubernetes versions on the backup. I think I spoke last week about it. Now I'm tackling a little bit a longer conversation about API group versions. And I'm not gonna go into what API groups is. I'm probably gonna write a blog post about it. But what I wanna quickly share my screen, if I may, about the ticket that I'm using to do this proposal. The ticket is this one, 2251. You can see the details, the person who created. I think I like the way the person put is very well. Each API group has versions, and depending on your deployment, you have a preferred version of your API group. As far as I can tell, it's not configurable, the preferred version. You can disable groups, but you cannot tell cherry pick which ones are preferred version. Why this is important? Because Velero backs up the preferred version today. Okay, so when you take a backup, if you explode the tarball, you're gonna see the directory structure. There's inside of the resource list and the API group, the objects are there. But if you look at the API, Discover API, if you do another call, you get the entire list of the items across multiple groups, whatever the cluster support. So I did a preliminary code change, and what is showing right now, what I'm put on the screen, it's a typical backup using the patch that I'm working on. If you're familiar, it has the directory structure of the backup. So you have resources, and then you have the directories of the resource lists. It's the resource and the group, right? I'm gonna use this one as an example called horizontal pod outscaler, which is part of the group outscaling, which, by the way, we can classify API groups in two major categories. The ones that are native to Kubernetes, part of the API server, that's code embedded to the API server, and another group of API groups that are part of CRDs that when you extend Kubernetes, you create your own group. For Velero, we're concentrating on the Kubernetes. For this testing and coding, I'm using the native Kubernetes examples first. Okay, so horizontal pod scaler, it's a resource item that belongs to auto scaling group. Now, on this particular backup that I took, it's a 116. I did a code change that now I'm backing up the same item, but for each version that my cluster happens to support. So here now I have a subdirectory v1, v2 beta 1, v2 beta 2, and they point to the same object. Okay, and how I know that's the same object? When I double click here, you know, the UID of the object across all those versions is the same. The format, which is different, because V2 beta 2 has extra fields than V1, which is being backed up is the preferred. So that I'm explaining this to the community to, number one, tell where am I, right? And collect thoughts, concerns, ideas about how to tackle this. At this point, the code changes make sure first we're backing up all the versions of the objects and not breaking anything, make completely backward compatibility, if I can pronounce that word. So if you see here, namespace is the default, right? If I double click here, and I do view soft wrap, JSON. This object being backed up, it's outscaling V1, and it's a horizontal outscaling, and have everything about V1. However, when I created that object, if you see here, last apply configuration, I created it's outscaling V2 beta 2. Don't be scared. We're not losing any information today, right? Because the actual logic for the new code, I mean, the new objects right here is annotation. But moving forward would be great to have all the versions of the objects inside of the backup. When you restore, it's gonna be in a different version of Kubernetes. It happens not to support the preferred version that you backed up, but because we're gonna have some versions ahead, we're gonna have some convergence and be able to restore all the objects. I'm thinking ahead. Right now we have like 20 groups, part of Kubernetes, native groups, right? 20. Depending on your deployment, can have more than that. I think when I saw OpenShift is 40 groups, but think a couple years from now, when we're gonna probably have hundreds of groups. And that's where we're gonna setting, you know, this foundation to be able to back up and restore those structures, regardless the version of the Kubernetes you're running. I'm gonna stop for a second and ask if anyone has a question about it.
No, I think, I mean, I'll add to that. I completely agree about the importance of this work, Rafael. I think there's kind of two key principles in that work. Number one is don't break existing support. So just like Velero today backs up the preferred API and restores the preferred API should it exist, that functionality should be there. But then what this work is enabling us is immense flexibility so that should the API change in the future, we're backing up all the context at backup time, and we're going to try to help users identify, and hopefully we'll do that automatically, a possible target for the restore. So that enables moving from one version of Kubernetes to the other to give you a lot more flexibility. Thumbs up from our end.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments on Rafael's suggestion here? All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Rafael. Great stuff. Thank you for bringing it up here in the community meeting. Really, really appreciate it. Let's continue on with status updates here from Steve.
Yeah, I don't have a big update this week. I was on community support last week. A lot of PR reviews to do, both from the core team and from community members, so that kept me pretty busy. I did spend some time getting getting an environment set up for testing with the CSI snapshot work that Ashish and Nolan have been working on. So I did that in Azure. I was able to get an environment up and running pretty easily. If folks have access to that and want to try it out there, I basically spun up an AKS cluster using Kubernetes 1.17 and then essentially just followed the instructions in the Azure CSI repo, which walk you through getting the CSI driver set up and then adding all the snapshot controllers as well. So I did some testing there, submitted 1 or 2 PRs based on what I found to fix a couple minor issues, but generally things are looking good. You know, that doesn't mean we're done, but for the things that have been done, things are looking good. So probably will continue to do some more testing there, and that's just a good way for me to stay engaged with what's going on there. Beyond that, I had a PR that's been open for a couple of weeks, 2317, which was doing some refactoring of where we have validation code for our backup API objects. I think last time I looked, I was still waiting for some input from Carlesia and Ashish on naming. So I'd like to get that resolved so that at the right time, I can rebase this and get it merged, because it's moving a bunch of code around in the backup controller. It's prone to running into merge conflicts. So I'm just gonna have to get the timing right here. I'm not gonna actively work on this right now, but at some point, if there's sort of a quiet period, I'd like to get this done, because I'd like to do the same thing for other controllers as well. So once I get the first one kind of signed off on and merged, then the other ones are, you know, the approach is well defined. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it for me.
I will take a look at it, Steve. Sorry to hold you up.
Cool. No, it's just a question on naming, so not a big deal. I just want to make sure everyone has a chance to provide input.
Awesome. Any questions, comments on Steve's work here? All right. Ashish, since you're on now, maybe you want to do your status updates?
Sure. So I'm continuing to work on the CSI stuff. Last time, like 2 weeks ago, I had brought up this issue that I opened in the upstream external snapshot repository, where deletion of a volume snapshot does not clear the ref.UID from the volume snapshot content. So there was some discussion that happened in this issue, and looks like there is logic that depends on how the volume snapshot contents are named. At least that's what my understanding was based on the discussion here. So we may have to revisit how we perform restores, but that's the update on that. And making more progress on like being able to back up volume snapshots that were taken outside of Velero. This is a scenario where where as an application user, it is possible to use the CSI drivers to take volume snapshots yourself. We also want to be able to back that up. So I have a PR that is work in progress to back those up as well. So those are the 2 updates on the stuff that I've been working on.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Quick question on that. Are those not captured when you do a Velero backup now?
The volume snapshots that are not, no, they are not.
They're not, okay.
I mean, the volume snapshots are, but the associated volume snapshot contents are left behind.
Got it, okay.
Yeah, so that's what this PR is basically addressing. The other thing was, the other thing that I've been working on other than CSI is kind of trying to build a catalog of standard operating procedures for backing up and restoring data stores. And I wanted to kind of reach out to the community to see what you are all up to. And kind of get a prioritized list of the data stores that we want to tackle with first. and see how useful it is. I know my folks have been using MySQL a lot. I'm curious to know if you're all using or running it in a single pod or running it in HA. We don't have to discuss this now. We can discuss this during the discussion section of the meeting.
So Ashish, may I suggest one more thing? You can create like a survey monkey and just put all the different databases on there and also allow them to enter their own. And let's just post it on Slack, on our Twitter handle, and basically give them that, hey, we're looking to help you back up and restore these data stores better on Velero. We have bandwidth to start with one of them. Let's figure out which ones you think is the most important and give them the option to order it. So I think the SurveyMonkey allows you to create an ordering query, and then ask them if anyone is interested to help us on any of these, deliver this solution. Maybe we'll get a community member to help us. So I think this would engage them a lot more.
That's
I can help you with that.
Yeah, thanks, Jonas.
Sure thing.
Yeah, that's all I have. I don't have anything else going on.
All right. Any questions, comments for Ashish? Okay. Next up, Carlisia.
Okay, so just a couple things from me. There is the CLI install revamp PR, which is a PR for the design document for these changes, is ready for another round of review. It is not a small document and is not a small number of things proposed to change in a lot of details. If anyone from the community would like to review this, will be great, in addition to us. And if anybody thinks that they could use some help, some walkthrough help, just ping me. I'll be glad to hop on a Zoom and do that. And that also goes for the team. We can review this together if you think it's easier to go back to it and wrap your head around it. So I'll be glad to do that anytime. And I was actually asking myself, why are we doing this? It's a lot of changes. But then I went back to the issue reference, which is sort of like an epic with a bunch of items listed. And there are a bunch of little nagging UX things that this change basically would make the Velero install configuration act more like component on a component basis more than just like the plugins being a component, but like all the things also being components that, for example, if there is an invalid backup storage location, the Velero server will continue running, which is today, there's a lot of things there's a lot of dependency. I'm gonna try to split up. So it's CLI changes, but also changes on the side of on how Velero behaves, which I think a lot of us think, I think all of us thinks it's an improvement, at least the Velero core team, which we have been talking about this for a while. And the other thing is I am testing a PR that's up from a community contributor to make the Velero Helm chart compatible with Helm 3. So right now it's only compatible with the old Helm 2. And before, when I started looking into this, I thought we would have to maintain the Helm 2 charts side by side with the Helm 3 charts. But from what I researched recently, apparently the way it works is you maintain one set of charts in the Velero, the Helm, which will be compatible with Helm 3 and backwards compatible with Helm 2. So I'm testing that this PR addresses in both cases. That's it for me.
And Carlisia, just so you're aware, right there at the bottom, blocked by number 85, there's because of some changes that I introduced yesterday, there needs to be a new argument on the CI/CD stuff. So I tagged you on a review to get the lint passing.
Okay, cool. Oh, that's why it's failing. Yeah, I'll check that out. Thanks.
Carlicia, just so you know, I did start reading through the doc on the install and config stuff yesterday. Like you said, there is a lot there, so I'm reading through it a few times to kind of page it all back into my brain. I do think it probably would be helpful to have another Zoom session at some point in the coming days, but I think it'd be good if everyone could, you know, the folks who want to attend that ideally could read through the doc a couple of times and just kind of come ready with any questions or specific topics to discuss.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be glad to do that. It's a lot, and you know, I think having a Zoom session will make it easy for everybody.
Yeah, for sure.
Quick question on the CLI. Are we breaking backwards compatibility for that one? For the CLI revamp?
Sorry, Michael, by what compatibility?
Backwards compatibility. So folks that, are we breaking any of that with the CLI revamp?
Oh, this would be like for a major release. And yeah, it will be a breaking change. Yeah, it will be a breaking change for sure.
Is part of our deliverables to also, I'm assuming, the documentation to tell people, like, you know, if they had a script that looked like this, what's the new script gonna look like? Like, for example, like the changes, I'm assuming they can go through the documentation and find everything that changed, but like, how are we gonna help folks transition from before to the new one? We don't have to discuss it here, but think about that, what we might be able to do.
Yeah, we'll document things as best we can and keep improving as we find that people are having a hard time understanding. One thing for sure is that I think so part of this change is that we're going to have YAML files as outputs from each command that can be run using customize. So we're making sure that it's compatible with the customized usage. And we're going to have I propose we have a folder with example files of what these YAML files would look like. And actually, I do have example files in this PR. And I think it helps a lot to understand what it is, how things come together.
Okay, sounds good.
Right. Any other questions, comments for Carlicia? Okay, Nolan, you're up.
Okay. So pull request 2323, that was something I need to get back to this week. It's it's changes to core Velero to take the CSI snapshot objects that are being generated by Ashish's changes and actually uploading them to the object storage so that we can use them for other things like getting details in the client and doing syncs and things like that. So Steve did a review, and I need to go back and respond to that. But the last week was mostly spent doing an internal presentation prep. So I need to get back to this, clean it up, and do some more testing on it. So I think I'm at the same spot I was at last update. Let's see, what was my other update? Something else I started doing yesterday was testing and documenting the Helm 2 behavior with Velero. So something we've been aware of for a little bit, but didn't really have documented. I have an issue for this, and I'll link it in here shortly. Was if you have Helm 2 charts deployed and you back them up with Velero, and then you do a restore with Velero, your applications will come back and be running, but the Helm functionality will be broken. So like if you do Helm list or Helm status, it won't work. And through experimentation yesterday, what it looks like is Tiller doesn't grab the releases. The releases are stored in config maps, and Tiller does not grab the config maps that are present before it starts. So if you restore tiller first, then restore the config maps that represent the releases, then it all works fine. So in my just manual restores, just like doing a backup of the full cluster and restoring things piece by piece, I kind of, this is what I came up with without deep diving into their docs. But it looks like that order is what you need to do to get Helm 2 working. Given the deprecation of Helm 2, I'm probably just going to document this. And if someone wants to make a plugin that goes and detects a config map, then goes and gets the tiller deployment, they're welcome to, and figures out restore item action that goes and restores the tiller deployment first, that would be great. But for now, I think I'm just going to document this, and then the next thing will be to take a Helm 3 chart for the same application and try it and see if it displays similar behavior. I don't think it will, because Helm 3 doesn't have tiller. And I think that's most of what I've got.
I have a comment about that, Nolan.
Yeah.
Do you think there are enough people using Helm 2, not that Helm 3 has been out for a little while?
I don't know. I think I don't know that I can answer that reliably. I just don't have enough information.
It's kind of weird to know. Help, like for example, some versions of OpenShift didn't support Helm at all because of tiller. So it was very celebrated in the community that when tiller went away. However, it takes a long time for IT admins and infrastructure to move to the latest and greatest. Helm actually just has to graduate in CNCF right now today actually. So you can think that people will move to Helm 3. How many of them have moved? It just takes a while. It really does.
I would say, I would kind of echo that to say there's probably a lot of existing installs that just haven't moved yet. And I would also say, like, look at charts like ours even that haven't fully upgraded to Helm 3 compatibility.
Yeah, that is true.
And I think our fellow VMware folks with the Bitnami team had done like how to use Velero with Bitnami charts that explicitly excluded the chart portions because of this kind of behavior. So I at least want to document this so people are aware of it. And I think going forward, I want to fix Helm 3 behavior if there's any bugs. But I think Helm, my instinct is fix Helm 3 going forward, and there's probably enough Helm 2 installs, but I don't have any data.
Yeah, that makes sense, Nolan.
And I just noticed Cyril had a question. We can go ahead, and Cyril, we can go ahead and add your question to a discussion topic and get to that. I think we're transitioning to that now. I didn't have anything else to add unless someone had a question for me.
Yep, sounds good. All right, so moving on to discussion topics. Do you want to bring up your discussion topic first there, Cyril?
Sure.
Welcome to the meeting, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Hi all. I cannot share my screen, but maybe you can just share it. And oh, okay. Stop to. Oh, okay. Of course, I have the Catalina.
Maybe you want to just share the issue number that you want to talk
yes,
about.
it's better. 2361. It's going to be better. Otherwise, I have to just quit and reconnect. I don't know if someone can share the.
2361, you said?
Yes. It's the second one, I think, on the list.
I just pasted it into the notes.
Perfect.
Okay. Can you all see?
Yeah, I mean, I can see, so I guess. So I'm working on Cascop, which is a Kubernetes operator for Cassandra. It allows you to create a cluster by just creating a custom resource. And you can do many operations like, I don't know, like adding nodes, scaling up, down, triggering some actions on the different pods. But the issue that we have is that we can't do any backups right now. So we're looking into two solutions, the first one being Velero and the second one being Kane. And Kane is more just Cassandra focus only. So I wanted to give a shot to Velero. Yeah, but the issues I have today are the one I listed, saying, yeah, and in short, it's that I cannot specify what I want to back up, for example. So we have like, I can snapshot the whole data volume, which is a local persistent volume, and it works fine, but I cannot specify what I want to back up. I looked into annotations. I did a manual RESTIC backup. It's on-premise, and it works as expected if we had like the annotations available, but then there are other issues like hooks not being able to see what those, I mean, any information regarding the current backup, like what do we want to back up, things like that. And the other issue is regarding the restore. So I cannot, for example, restore files in place without recreating the whole thing. And that's something that, yeah, we want to be able to do, like we corrupted one table and we want to be able to just restore the files for that table and for specific snapshots. So I know it's a lot of requirements, but yeah, I wanted to bring this up and know if this is something that others were able to do. I don't know, with a workaround or any other solutions. If this is something that you had in mind for any other databases, or I don't know. Yeah, I wanted to bring this up. I feel like it makes sense, and that Velero is a great tool. I would like to be able to use Velero because that way I can use Velero not only for Cassandra, but anything else, as opposed to the other solution that we have that is only Cassandra focused and wouldn't work with any other solution. I mean, it does the job and can, I mean, it's a simple tool and can do more than what Velero can do today just for Cassandra. But yeah, Velero seems to be like a more global, general solution for backups.
I think this ties really well into what Ashish was talking about earlier, setting up a standard for backing up different databases like MySQL, Cassandra, and so on.
Yes. So I would say yes and no. What we wanted to do was like back up whole of Cassandra just from a Kubernetes perspective. Like, what are the best practices to back up Cassandra? Say, do you want to use RESTIC? Do you want to use the VolumeSnapshotR plugins, or how else to back that up? And like if there are CRDs, how that require that work with the data store, how do we back that up? So that was what I was getting to, but this also kind of hints at that. The reason why I asked Cyril to open this issue was to kind of see what everybody else was up to. Like, is this a requirement for most people using Cassandra? So I think the last we were talking about this in the Slack channel was to use rethink and let rethink scrape just part of the file system instead of the whole file system. Is that right, Cyril?
Yeah, so the issue that we have is, I mean, just imagine that you have a database of, I don't know, 900 gigabytes, and you just corrupted one table, which is, I don't know, 100 megabytes. You don't want to restore the whole thing just because you don't have the ability to do it. And same for, yeah, you said there are ways to back up Cassandra. So you can use a snapshot, but it's best to have the same snapshot done on all the nodes at the same time. And even if Cassandra files are immutable, you don't want those files to disappear when you start the backup. So I don't know exactly how rethink works internally, if it keeps handles on the files, just in case they're deleted. But if it doesn't, yeah, we don't want to lose them. So there's a tool on Cassandra to create snapshots. It just uses hard links internally, and then we just back up those files.
Yeah, I am not sure I have a proposal or a clear path forward for this. So I wanted to see what everybody else thought.
Yeah, I mean, so I'd say, first of all, it's really helpful to have this information and see, you know, what some of the challenges are with workloads like this. So yeah, I think, you know, as far as selectively backing up files using rethink, I could see that being a doable feature. It's not necessarily too difficult to do. We have stayed away from doing sort of individual file recovery. That's something that we've avoided in the past, and that's not to say that we couldn't revisit that decision, but when it has come up in the past, we've stayed away from it. And I guess the other thing is kind of, I think you're also looking for sort of a data only restore here, right? So not restoring all of the Kubernetes YAML, but just restoring data. And that is something that we have talked about and we would like to do in a general way. It's in our backlog somewhere. I think we're waiting for some design work to be done there. But that would definitely cover kind of part of the needs here. So yeah, I mean, I don't have like a clear answer, but you know, some of the things we have thought about, some we haven't, but we probably need to do a little bit more analysis here to kind of figure out what we want to do. One
thing I'll toss out, and I don't know if this is the right way to do it, but it's something that came to mind for me, is especially with rethink, it may make more sense to do a two-step process where you use the Cassandra snapshotting tool to send the snapshots to some location that rethink then backs that up instead of backing up the Cassandra files themselves. I don't know if that's better, but that's kind of what that came to mind as you were describing how this was working.
Yeah, that also makes sense. Like you say, I think it's called node tool snapshot or something. So you say node tool snapshot and direct it to a path which mounts a different PV maybe, and just back that PV up.
So yeah, so just to be clear, not to snapshots or calling the snapshots through the JMX, just creates hard links. So it does it on the same physical volume. If you want to add another step, that means copying those files. So I don't know how long it's going to take. And so it means time and space. So that's why I had in mind just to tell rethink to just back up the right location. I mean, everything can be done. I just felt that, being able to just target those files will make it just faster and wouldn't need a new volume, another volume just, to temporarily store those files.
Yeah, I don't know. Rethink usually does better with lots of little files rather than a few big files. So you may see poor performance and maybe even corrupted backups if there's writes going on to Cassandra while Rethink is trying to back up. I'm not sure of that though.
Yeah, so Cassandra files are immutable. They won't be updated. They can be deleted though. That's why I was talking about keeping those files handled somehow, because when there is a compaction operation, but those files will never be updated.
Right. Yeah, you did say that earlier. Got it. Okay. Yeah, I think the only thing then is, like Steve said, the granularity, and I get why you say, like, if you only deleted one table, you don't want to wait for the whole restore. But so far, Velero, in terms of PVs, hasn't really done anything beyond restoring the PV. The granularity has just been at the PV layer. That's something, like Steve said, we could revisit, but yeah, I think the hook stuff, I think that's something that could be useful to other applications as well.
Cool, thanks. I mean, I'm not expecting an answer on the spot. So I just wanted to raise the issue and, what we're trying to solve, and, if Velero, even the long term, could be a solution somehow.
Yeah, well,
So
thanks again.
The fastest or the easiest path forward, maybe just to let Rethink selectively back up files. I guess we can discuss this in the issue and come up with an idea.
Yeah, I think continuing in the issue and continuing on Slack to hash this out would be awesome. Thank you so much, Cyril, for bringing this up. And again, welcome to the meeting.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, and you can stop sharing, Ashish, if you want. Right, next up we have Mayank.
Yeah, so I think I got the response from Steve. He already mentioned in the note.
Yeah, this is the thing we talked about last week, the plugin that you wrote for the local PVs. So I took another look at it. I think this would be a reasonable thing to put into core. I don't know if anyone else had a chance to look.
Yeah, so we release it tomorrow.
I'm sorry, your mic was super loud. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, so I will release a PR for this today or tomorrow.
Okay, that sounds good. And then, yeah, we can do a detailed code review, and anyone else who has any thoughts can weigh in there. But I think it looks like a generic capability that makes sense to be in core.
Yeah, thanks.
Sure, thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Last piece here, Nolan.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention Kubernetes 1.18 is coming out today. If anyone has capacity to try out Velero 1.3.1, which is the current latest version. That would be awesome. Let's see what's going on. And yeah, that's really all I had.
Sounds great. Does anyone else have any other discussion topics or comments or concerns that they want to bring up on the meeting today?
I had a general question. I have a vague memory that this may have come up in the past, but one thing I'd noticed recently trying to debug an issue was the difference between the way describe backup and describe restore work in terms of showing data. In particular, warnings and errors on backup, the describe just tells you the number but doesn't enumerate them in the output, and you got to look at the logs for the backup to see those errors. And restore seems to do the opposite. It actually lists the errors there, and sometimes those errors don't actually show up in the log at all. Wondering if there's any thought about maybe trying to make those two kind of behave in a similar way, giving kind of more information in both cases.
Yeah, that's a discrepancy that's been around for a while, and we have talked about it, and have talked about I think primarily making restore work more like backup. So basically just putting everything in the log, but potentially also making some CLI improvements so that, whether it's backup or restore, you can potentially just display all of the error messages from the log directly in the output of describe. So I think that would kind of be the best of both worlds, because it's, it's a consistent experience on both sides, but also easily accessible through the CLI. Does that sound like reasonable?
It does. I mean, the thing I run into is that for me personally, it's very convenient to see that those outputs in describe. It's right there in a Velero describe, without having to forth the log file. But at the same time, I run into cases where, users are looking at this and they don't necessarily have the Velero, client installed, because they're just using Velero as kind of a component. They're not using it directly. And, sometimes I got to work through getting them to install the Velero client so they can look at the output there when really it was just in the log. If it's in the log to start with, it's clear. So getting it to display in both places from the same source would be great, because it solves both use cases and it makes, the restore and the backup consistent.
Yeah, like this like I was doing an internal presentation and I was like stepping through the describe output on both, and this actually like hit me in the face, because I was like, wait a second, as I'm stepping through both of these, they aren't the same.
Right.
And yeah, I would like to unify them. And I kind of agree that having that summary of like, hey, there's some errors in the backup. What were those errors? I personally would like to see them bubbled up in describe.
And I noticed that difference for a while. The thing that surprised me recently was realizing that the restore errors is actually the opposite of describe. They're in the summary and they're in, they're on the file storage. But if you actually look at the pod logs, you're not seeing them at all in some cases.
Right. They get shifted off into the restore log.
Right. And some of them aren't even in the restore log. There's like a separate restore results file that sometimes contains some of the warnings and errors.
Oh yeah, so I remember having a conversation with you, maybe Andy, about like there's like 3 or 4 places we like fanned out those results, and we needed to really combine and document where and why things went.
Yeah. I know there's a specific issue that covers this, because I was trying to get some of it done before we shipped 1.0 and couldn't get around to all of it. So it's in the backlog somewhere. It's not currently prioritized.
That might be why, because I remember in the back of my mind thinking, I'm sure this was mentioned on a call, sometime last year, but I was looking at the 1.3 and it's not there. That's why I wasn't sure where that was. But
yeah.
Okay.
I'll post a link to the issue. I'll go find it and put it on the public Slack channel.
Awesome. Thank you, Scott. Any other questions, comments? before we close out? All right. With that, thank you all for joining today's meeting. It'll be the recording will be up on YouTube shortly, and yeah, hope you all have a fantastic rest of the week, and see you next week. Have a good one.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.